Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from Washington, D.C. I am Eric Feldman, Associate Director of FIU in D.C. It is my pleasure to open the second session of our three-day virtual fly-in seminar with the Office of Global Learning Initiatives, focused on global issues and careers. For those of you who are joining us outside of that program's cohort, thank you very much for joining us. We have a very special guest today. So the Office of Global Learning and FIU in DC wanted to open up this as a keynote session to global learning students outside of our transformation group for the year. And thank you all for being here. I'm going to get out of the way and turn it over to Denise Carranza, who will introduce herself briefly and also introduce today's guest speaker and lead some conversation with him. Anyone else in the room who has questions at any point, you don't have to wait for a specific Q&A session. Use the hand raise feature under the reactions tab to let Denise know you have a question, and she will moderate accordingly. Over to you, Denise.
Okay, well, hi everyone. My name's Denise. I'm a junior at FIU studying graphic design. I'm really passionate about human rights and immigration and all kinds of issues like that, and showcasing them through art and spreading the message like that. So today we have Eskinder Negash. I'll read a short bio of him and then we can get straight to questions. And like Eric said, if you use the raised hand motion on Zoom, I'll be sure to look over at that. So to start off, he's the president and CEO of the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. It's an organization founded in 1911 to protect the rights and address the needs of persons in forced or voluntary migration worldwide. And it also supports their transition to a dignified life. So Mr. Negash brings 40 years of proven nonprofit management experience on behalf of refugees, immigrants, and other vulnerable populations. He served in the Obama administration from 2009 to 2015 as the director of the Office of Refugees Resettlement, and he also, under his leadership, he served a total of 850,000 people. I'm so sorry, sometimes so bad with numbers. And he also served as Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the USCRI and Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer of the International Institution of Los Angeles. And he received an Outstanding American by Choice Award from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services and has been a board member of the Joint Voluntary Agencies Committee of California, the California State Refugee Advisory Council, the Coalition of Human Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles, and is currently a board member of Interaction, I think is how you say it, the largest coalition of nonprofits within the United States. So hi, Mr. Negash, it's really nice to meet you. So we do have a few questions for you to start us off.
Great, thank you, Denise. I think I learned something about myself that next time I'll be cutting my bio in half, so I don't have to show my age, how old I am. But thanks for the kind introduction.
No problem. Well, I guess my first question that I have is really how you got introduced to this kind of work and what really inspired you to pursue it and why it's important to you.
Well, again, you know, my journey on this job and other jobs I have taken is a little bit different than most people and most CEOs. I came to the US actually as a refugee alone, without any family member. So when you hear this days unaccompanied minors, I was actually one of the unaccompanied minors, even though I came as a refugee, because as you know, the refugee process is different than the unaccompanied minors who are coming from Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, or Mexico. But mine was, when I was young, I went to the neighboring country, Sudan, like any other refugees. And then I ended up working for an organization called International Rescue Committee. And then after working there, I was helping refugees, other refugees. I came to the US as a refugee and continue this journey of serving refugees for over 40 years now. So that's really, for me, I'm very passionate about it because my journey is very much similar to many refugees who came to this country after me or before me. And so that's why I felt if I can actually be an instrument of change and talk about these people, not just because I went to some policy school to learn about refugees and immigrants. I feel that I can actually be a good messenger of the plight of refugees and immigrants. So I continue to do that. And now it's over 40 years. I've done case management. I actually started in the US resettling Vietnamese refugees after 1975. After the war was over, a lot of Vietnamese came. And then after Vietnamese, Cambodians came, Laotians came, and then continue to this day, a different group of people coming in. So I had a hands-on experience, resettle people, find them apartment, got them employment, and I did everything that any other refugee service organization staffers do. Currently, as Denise mentioned, I'm the CEO of this organization. This organization has been in existence for 110 years. This is our 110 years experience year. And we are quite dedicated, again, in terms of serving refugees and immigrants. From 1980 to last year, we have resettled close to 350,000 refugees in the US. And then a few years back, we decided to have an accompanying minor shelter. So we decided to open a shelter, girls' shelter in Florida and Palm Beach to make sure that, this unaccompanied minors, children are coming in, get proper help, education, case management, all the services that a child needs. So currently we have over 100 girls in our custody. There's education given right there, and we provide all kind of training, mental health, and other issues. As you can imagine, some of these young girls, travel from El Salvador, from Guatemala, all the way to Mexico, from Mexico to Texas. So nobody talks about their journey, how much they suffer, what they went through. We just simply count them as numbers. Oh, this number of unaccompanied are coming to Mexico or passing through Mexico. But we don't have time to pause and say, how was the journey? Nobody really asks that question. The media tends to say, okay, people are coming, the border is open. So all the debates, as you can hear, is not about their suffering. How many of them had been raped through their journey? How many of them were trafficked? So nobody knows this experience. So my agency, we decided to focus on girls, because we felt that we do have some experience to provide services, and it has been considered a model shelter that we have. And then, as you know, we also provide services to foreign victims of human trafficking, and we've been doing that for a number of years. And then when the kids are released from the U.S. government custody, we follow up with home visits and making sure that they go to school, somebody is really helping them. So we do a lot of work. So our organization has continued with that mission, the mission that Denise started this discussion. So that's my journey. Hopefully this will be the kind of work I will continue to do until I decided to give it up.
Yeah, I always love to know how people get started in their careers and what inspires them to do. So it's really interesting how yours got started. I think I do want to learn more about the USCRI and what work you do. Could you tell us a little bit more about your work with the Obama administration, when you worked with that administration in the past, and how it compares to the work you do now?
Yeah, so when I got nominated by Obama administration to serve as the director of refugee resettlement. There is an office within the Department of Health and Human Services. And that office, there is a department that I was leading. And when I was there, we were responsible for victims of human trafficking. I was responsible for unaccompanied minors. In fact, in that 5-6 years period, we ended up helping about 135,000 unaccompanied minors, and overall about 835 refugees and others. So that work is a little bit of different because the government's office, the policies of the government is quite different. You don't have a lot of discretion to do a number of things, but we provided the best possible services. I opened shelters during an influx. I have to work with the Pentagon to open military bases for the children to be cared for. So my work there included victims of human trafficking, and we used to have a program called Survivors of Torture. We had about 29 agencies around the country who were funding, and then we resettled and we funded a lot of agencies for victims of human trafficking and opened shelters around the country to make sure that when the kids are coming, they will be transferred to a humane, caring facilities where there are social workers, LCSWs, people with experience, expertise who can actually help them. So that was a government. Here, it's a nonprofit organization. The rules are a little bit different. I do have some discretion in terms of, how to start a program. That's how I started a program in Florida. And then we started the program in El Salvador, and then Honduras, and then Mexico. So in El Salvador, we started the program in 3 locations. Some of you may know El Salvador, we are from El Salvador. We started the program in San Salvador, Usulután, Chalatenango, in Honduras, we just opened one. In Mexico, we are partnering with a Mexican organization called the Habesha Project, the only organization, the only organization resettling refugees in Mexico. So we open office in Tijuana. Some of you know Tijuana, it's close to San Diego. And then we have office in San Diego. Basically, the idea is to provide legal services for asylum seekers in Mexico, and then once they come to the U.S. in San Diego, also we wanted to do that. In El Salvador, what we do in Honduras is when the kids are deported, a lot of them end up being deported to back their country of origin. We want to see if we can actually help them, in terms of vocational training, in terms of helping them a job. Some of you may not know this. When you go back from the US to El Salvador, everybody assumes that you are a gang member. So nobody's going to hire you. Nobody's going to welcome you. So I started this program. So basically what I did is working with a local agency. There is a nonprofit organization to provide them quick vocational training in terms of basic mechanics, or things, very simple things, because as you know, in El Salvador, high school dropout is about 68%. So my idea is if we can provide them that training, and then we'll be incentive. We pay about 50% of their salaries as incentive to employers to hire them, at least for 3 months. And then if they continue to work, hopefully they will continue their employment. When I say 50% of their salary, I'm talking about $4 a day. So minimum wage in El Salvador is $8. And if you are 14 years old with parental permit, you can actually work in El Salvador. So we're trying to replicate the same thing in Honduras and then in Guatemala also. But again, my idea is we serve them here, but if they go back, I don't want them to go to I mean, they're going back to the condition that actually forced them to come to the US again. So I'm trying to create an environment. Maybe some of them will consider staying home, be with the family. They don't need to be, victims of the coyotes or the traffickers. So that was an idea. So we continue to do that, and hopefully in Mexico. What the idea I have in Mexico is there's a lot of universities in Mexico, as some of you know, and there is a legal law school. I wanted to see that pro bono legal services for asylum seekers who want to stay in Mexico. A lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people who go to Mexico stay in Mexico. But the legal system in Mexico, the asylum system is a little bit different than ours. So there's also another idea: how can we help this migration people who are seeking asylum in Mexico and other places? So that's my government and nonprofit work.
Right. So then for the work you did with the Obama administration, was there anything you felt you could have done then that you're doing now with the nonprofit or anything like that?
Well, working in the government is different, because there is a process, a long process. In the private sector, it's different. I'm responsible and accountable for the work at USCRI. So tomorrow, if I say, I think we need to go to Little Haiti in Miami and see if we can help some of the newcomers, the process is much shorter. I just have to talk to my board and talk to staff. Maybe I will come and visit, and then we can make a decision. And the government, the process is very, very long. It requires a lot of patience. So that's a difference. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. So before I go into the next question, I see that Emily has a question. So Emily, you can go and ask yours.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. This is a very great conversation. I have a question. So obviously, as you're well aware, there's a lot of people that fall in through the cracks, especially victims of trafficking, and they end up being homeless or they end up not receiving the care that they need. I wanted to know, what is your organization doing to combat this issue, especially people that are homeless and that don't receive these cares and aren't really familiar with the system that we operate under?
So when the victim of human trafficking, there's two kinds of trafficking. There's a domestic trafficking, as you know, and there is also foreign trafficking. So the domestic trafficking issue, most of them are probably American citizen or permanent resident. That service is being done by another department within the Department of Health and Human Services. Our focus, because of we are a refugee and immigrant organization, we focus on the foreign victims. People coming in from El Salvador, or is it from Mexico or from Bangladesh? As long as they don't have legal status here, what we wanted to do is to make sure, number one, they're free from that bondage. Number two, to see if we can help them find employment, get them legal services, find them housing. You are right, a lot of these victims, nobody is here to help them. So what we have done is we signed up about 160 organizations around the country. And then, for example, if somebody is in Miami, so we know that there is an organization in Miami, and we have already signed an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. So we work with them and we do case management, how to help them. So we have done that. So we have almost everywhere in the country, we have a partnership. So when we get them, we provide them service. Sometimes we give them financial assistance when it's necessary, finding them housing, get the medical care. And some of them, as have a lot of trauma. They need also that kind of mental health services. So our model is, here we are in Washington, that have partnership around the country, agencies, nonprofit agencies, small and big. So make that connection. So what we did is at the beginning of the year, we signed that MOU, and we have what we can call deliverables. These are the things you have to do. Then with that, we make that connection. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of knowledge in the domestic, victims, because sometimes people call them runaway children and things like that. But I think there is a different section within the federal government deal with the domestic trafficking.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I see that there's a question in the chat. Chloe, would you like to speak it out loud or would you prefer for me to read it out loud?
Hello, everyone. I'm in a coffee shop right now, so I don't know if there's a lot of background noise. If so, I don't mind stating it.
I think there's a little, but it's whatever you decide, whatever's easiest.
Okay. Well, hello, Mr. Negash. I'm so happy to be here today.
Excuse me, Chloe. Wait, the best way is if we can mute all of our, unless you are speaking, and that way we can hear, because sometimes I'm having a hard time hearing.
I think that is Chloe's background noise. Maybe Denise will read Chloe's question for her.
Okay, thank you. That's perfect.
Sure.
So Chloe asked, from your perspective and insight, what led the Biden administration to go back and expand the cap on refugee immigrants? What role did the U.S. Committee of Refugees and Immigrants play in this needed change? Should we anticipate more measures to prevent individuals from being able to receive TPS status as a compromise?
Can you repeat again? It's so difficult.
I think it's 3 questions. So I'll start off with the first one. It says, from your perspective, what led the Biden administration to go back and expand the cap on refugee immigrants?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think you have seen, there is a White House announcement yesterday. They decided for FY 2021, which is ending September 30th, they're planning to bring in 62,500 refugees for this year. For next year, they wanted to bring 125,000. As you know, the Trump administration for FY 2021, they decided only to bring 15,000. I mean, we've never done that before. So the Biden administration is committed, from everything I know, that they will bring more refugees. This year, 60,500. Next year, 125,000 refugees. Again, they will be deciding that 125,000 because they have to consult with Congress and get appropriation. That's money to fund the program. So I believe by September, at the end of September, they will be making another announcement out of these 125,000. Some of them from where these people will be coming in. There's what they call it regional allocation. So that will be a decision by the administration. But for next year, for sure, they promised to bring in 125,000.
Okay, so
just let me add one thing. When you hear 60,000, 180, 125,000, it sounds as a lot of number. Keep in mind, the global refugees and IDPs, these are internally displaced people. That number is 80 million and growing. So out of 80 million, we bring 0.00 something. But when you hear it here, wow, 60,000, 50,000, it sounds a lot. But that's a very, very, very small number. Not everybody who ended up being a refugee or IDP will get a chance to come to the US. That's not the case. Sorry, Dennis.
No, that's all right. I think Chloe's second question is if the USCRI had any kind of play any role in this needed change. If you work directly with the government.
Yeah, so what we do beside helping people is we do a lot of advocacy work. In fact, for almost 60 years, we only did advocacy work in our history. I think from 1967, 1968 to 2009. Now, we have a policy division and advocacy division here with our organization. And we focus on really advocacy in Washington. We do advocacy globally also for refugees. So for example, I think that I heard TPS, we do advocate a lot on TPS issue, whether it's from El Salvador, Honduras, other countries, when especially there is a conflict, we do advocacy work and sometimes we get very successful. We do for trafficking victims or unaccompanied minors. Advocacy is really the core mission of our organization. I mean, we provide the services, but at the end of the day, if you don't do the advocacy work, there's really nothing you can do. So we do a global advocacy. We used to publish every year. I think we published it for almost 60 years. Every year, a policy paper on a global refugees IDPs. And we stopped doing it, lack of resources, but at the same time, these days you can get that information easily, because in the old days, we used to go to the field, collect that information, write it up and put the policy paper. Now we can do it differently, but we are now focusing on issue paper. In fact, we published, if you go to our website, you will find publication on unaccompanied minors, which we call it the best interest of a child, on human trafficking. We did on refugee warehousing. There are some refugees who have been in refugee camps since 1968, since 1975. So we did also that campaign. So if you come to our website, you will see those publications. The other thing we do is every other week, we also send a policy and advocacy paper. If you are interested, you can also get it free. Is anybody willing to donate, we'll take it. But we want to make sure that people are getting that information also.
Okay, and so I think there's one last question from Chloe, and it was, should we anticipate more measures to prevent individuals from being able to receive TPS status as a compromise?
TPS is a temporary gap. We get TPS is usually lasted 18 months, and then it has to be renewed. My feeling is we need to come up with, as a country, a policy and migration reform system where somebody is temporary, somebody is permanent, somebody is deportable. It's just not a good way to handle this issue. So I like TPS as a last resort, but I think a permanency is much better. Imagine that you get a chance to work for 18 months. You have no other way of really trying to establish yourself, buy a house or send your kids to school. It's just not a very good system, but it's just a band-aid out of deportation. At least that's a better one. And a lot of people don't understand also, these TPS holders, they do pay also taxes, Social Security. So imagine if the TPS is expired and when they go back, that Social Security, that contribution they did, or the taxes will not follow them. So that's also another area. So TPS, temporary protected status, is good whenever we think there is a temporary fix, but the larger immigration issues, I think, should be resolved through a permanent solution.
Well, thank you for all your responses. I'm not sure if Chloe has any other further questions before we move on to someone else. Chloe? You're good? Okay, so I think the next hand I saw was Parachi, so you can go ahead and go.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. I have a question. I'm Venezuelan, and recently they approved the TPS for Venezuelans, and that is also like helping for find a job. But I know also other countries like El Salvador had the TPS for 2001, and they keep renewing it. So my question is, what do you think that what would happen, like that could help like Venezuelans to get like residence in the future, or how they will work with the government when they want to make sanctions for the government of Venezuela? What is your opinion regarding to that?
I think some of you know that Venezuela has now the largest refugees in the region. That number is really sometimes between 4 to 5 million. And then thank you to Colombia. So Colombia has actually decided to give them some rights to work and to do things. I think the U.S. has to consider Colombians as refugees, not as TPS. The TPS is because they are already here in the country. So we need to figure out how we can help them. they are refugees. They have a well-founded fear of persecution. They left the country because of the government in Venezuela. So I think we have to respond to the plight of Venezuelans. I mean, I think the Latin America, Central America, Mexico, Brazil, and Ecuador, as I said, open up their doors for the Venezuelans. I think we need to do the same thing also. So I think unless the government of Maduro is changed and there's a democratic system installed in Venezuela, the issue is going to take. The TPS is going to be seems to be the only option, but I encourage people also, since they have, from my perspective, again, I'm not the government, they have a well-founded persecution and they should be applying for asylum and they should consider approving their asylum application.
Thank you so much.
I also saw that Scarlett had a question. If you want to go now, Scarlett.
I actually have the same question as Prachi, which was, Venezuela is going through something right now, and there's so many refugees that are going to Colombia, to Ecuador, to many parts of the globe, and it's just a large influx of them as well. Is there anything that your organization has done to take steps for this? I know that there are a ton of refugee camps, but the Colombian people are also overwhelmed with the amount of Venezuelans that have entered. So is there any steps that that your organization has done in order to, I guess, alleviate the stresses in these other countries?
I don't think we did a great job on Venezuela as an organization. At the beginning of the crisis, I did send a couple of people to go to Ecuador and then Colombia, and then I went to Costa Rica. There was a big meeting, and then we talked about the issue of, but I mean, we did an issue paper trying to highlight the influx, as you say. And we did talk to USCRI, IOM was very involved. But as an organization, I don't think we didn't do enough. And I think we should focus again on their plight. I think, unfortunately, some crises take over things. But I think you are right in terms of doing advocacy work on, for Venezuela. And I don't think I can tell you that I don't feel good that we haven't done enough, but I think we should. And again, part of our challenge is, the resources. You have to pick and choose, and if you don't get a lot of funding for this kind of work. We do have a person who focuses in that part of the world, but because of the unaccompanied minor, the asylum issues in Mexico, and then of course, the Honduras and El Salvador, we focus on that. I think we should really focus on Venezuela. Yeah, so I don't think we did enough.
Thank you for your honest answer.
Yeah.
I see that another question came up on the chat. Would you like to speak it out loud, or would you prefer me to read it out loud? If anything, I can read it out loud for now. So Kashima says, Tanisha says, aside from the fact that protecting refugees and immigrants who are fleeing into the country is the morally correct thing to do for human beings, how do you answer the concerns from Americans that ask, why should we protect immigrants and refugees when we cannot even take care of the American citizens within our country? So that's the first question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, keep in mind, the best way to look at it is, this is a country of refugees and immigrants. Unless your last name is Pocahontas, we all came from someplace. Yeah. So I think the U.S. is really a good policy in terms of accepting refugees and immigrants. Until 1820, we actually in the U.S. we don't have any documentation. Anybody was coming from Eastern Europe, Western Europe, they were just coming in and go to New York, They check your TB test, and that's the way it used to be there. And then later on, we start really documenting, and then we came up with a quota system. So my feeling is it's not just the US, everybody has to be welcoming refugees, everybody. A lot of people also think bringing refugees or immigrants is a burden to a country. Number one, I don't believe that a human being can be a burden to another human being. Number two, if refugees and immigrants are a burden to any country, because there's a lot of them are coming in, then wouldn't you think that the US will be a poor country because of refugees and immigrants? When you look at, the major tech companies in this country are founded by refugees. Google was founded by a refugee from Russia. A lot of these companies, a lot of these businesses, you name it. So I'm not discounting, the Americans also need to be taken care of, and they need to work, they need to have jobs, they should have a better social system to help them. But at the same time, I think without refugees and immigrants, this country will be nothing. Look at the people who don't take refugees at all. They close their borders. They don't want anybody. Are they better than us? So I think that's why I think we, all of us, people like me, some of you guys with first generation experience, we have to explain to them, and all the engineers or the 75% of new tech companies were started either by immigrants or refugees in this country. So don't accept the facts when somebody say you are becoming a burden. No human being is a burden to another human being. And I think countries like America was very, very smart, the founders, welcoming refugees and immigrants to this country without any restriction is what built this country. Having said that, I'm not also discounting the history of slavery and their contribution to this country also. But this idea that because you have homeless in Los Angeles, therefore don't bring refugees. Well, I don't think that refugees have anything to do because these people are homeless. These people are homeless, but we decided not to help them is the reason. Not because refugees are coming into the country, therefore some money somehow is be diverted out of the homeless shelter to help refugees. So that's kind of the way I see it, and I don't want to dismiss their concern. There's a lot of people unemployed, COVID and other issues. The economy is disfranchised a lot of people, but I think this history has to play a role. You wouldn't find anybody. Look at the vice president. Her parents came as immigrants. Her mom is from India. Her dad is from Jamaica. The Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, came as a refugee from Cuba. Javier Becerra, the Secretary of Department of Health and Human Services, a Mexican American from East LA, where I grew up and worked. So you can go on. Look at it, even the people we have in different places. So I think this idea that we have to compare one suffering with another suffering is just not a very good way to talk about this issue. I hope I answered your question.
So she also has one more question before we move on to Camila's question. The second question is, a lot of constituents from congressional districts write and call in about this problem and feel that the government needs to focus on the challenges within the country that affect citizens. So how do you feel about that part also?
I think it's the same answer I gave it. Yeah, that's in every district there are challenges. In some districts there is homeless people. I'll give you one example. About I don't know, within around the White House, and there's a homeless. That just, I mean, when you go to Lafayette Park, which is in front of the White House, you see some homeless people. So I think in each district, there are people who are unemployed, out of work. Some factories have been moved to other countries. There's a lot of issues. I think the government should focus on that. I think this administration seems to understand this challenge. There is a social justice issue. There is equity, fairness. All of that seems, this administration is willing to tackle. But because of that, you don't close your doors. It just, that's not the way it works. So that's the same answer I have.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think Camila, you can go if you wanted to ask something.
Hi, how are you? I'm also Venezuelan. I'm international relations student, and I focus constantly on poverty. And I found that there is a gap between the communication that government and organizations have and the people who they are serving. So, in your experience, what are the best ways of building the bridge between these two in the ways of communicating and the information that they spread and they share on their interest?
I think that's part of the challenge. We talk immigration as if it is something new. So it's just something just happened. We didn't have that before. And the people who really push that agenda, one has to ask them, when did you start, worrying about these immigration issues? Is that, let's assume that it was 60 years ago when your parents came as refugees and immigrants. Should we start it at that time? We should stop these refugees, or should go to 75 years ago, or something. So it's really that communication. Either people don't know the history of this country. It's a great country, but it was built by refugees and immigrants. They're coming from Europe, they're coming from Africa, from Asia. I mean, everybody. I mean, this is what makes this country different and powerful. When I say powerful, I don't mean because of we have some military might. I'm talking about our diversity is the strength of this country. I just think people don't understand how different this country is compared to other countries who don't really have immigration experience. This is a country built by ordinary people from Mexico, from Ireland, from Russia. These ordinary people came to this country and created this extraordinary country. It's not just only the doctors and the engineers and the scientists came to this country, just peasant farmers, from every corner of the world came here and created this incredible, powerful country. And morally powerful, because everyone matters, everyone is equal. I mean, that's really what is missing. And then, of course, the media also contributed to the misinformation, because in this country, people don't really understand our history. Once you know the history of the country, you'll find out this is who we are. This is what makes this country better, and will continue to make it better. A lot of people also came because of freedom. I mean, it's a freedom-based country. You're free to dream. You're free to do things. Yes, there are challenges. There's all of the history. I mean, I don't want to tell you guys probably know better history than me, but that's what drives people. why would someone from Germany come to the US, or why somebody would come to El Salvador? You know, it's such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country. Yeah, by any standard. And Venezuela, you know, with so much resources, you know, Venezuela can actually feed the entire region with oil revenue. Again, freedom is the driving force a lot of people. People don't come to the US so they can apply for welfare or some food stamp. Yeah, if they want that kind of lifestyle, they would stay where they were. And I think I think we all collectively, the schools are not doing a great job. I'm sorry, maybe your university is doing a better job. You know, we don't talk about history. We don't really have an open discussion about history, about slavery, about discrimination, about, you know, history. I mean, for us to say Mexicans and this and that, you know, it's not a good way, you know. But I think maybe your generation will do a better job than mine. But again, you know, I'm a former refugee, so my feeling is a little bit different. I'm biased, you know. When I see another immigrants or when I see another refugees, the first thing I see is myself, whether it came from Panama, Venezuela, or something. You know, understand your pain deeply. Yeah. Because my experience is to some extent your experience. I may be poor, but leaving your country, your culture, your language, your neighborhood, your grandparents, your church, your whatever, and just uprooting yourself, going to another country should not be considered as an easy decision. It's a painful, painful decision, but you have to do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that,
hopefully my generation does work on it.
I hope so. You know, I was young, you know, I didn't have a single person when I came to this country, a young boy with nothing, no family, no community. You know, I feel that I was just walking in the ocean by myself. But that experience is not my experience only. It's the experience of a lot of people, you know, traveling from El Salvador, you know, through Guatemala, going to Mexico, all the way to Texas. I mean, it's, you know, it's not a tourism, you know, it's not sightseeing that people do. Some of them die. I don't know if you have been to Arizona, in Tucson area, in that desert. How many of them didn't make it because there's no water for them? And so I think we have to be very passionate when talking about human dignity. Forget their immigration status, TPS, all that kind of technical. Just be human. You know, the day we stop seeing ourselves through others, that's where the disaster starts. When we see another human being, we have to learn to see ourselves. Their pain, their history, their suffering is real. Yeah, it's not just fake.
Thank you so much.
I get a little bit.
I think we still have a few more minutes for questions. I'll start off one that I still had from earlier. It was, what do you feel is most effective in advocating for and protecting immigrants, especially for students? How do you think we can be a part of this?
Advocacy, you know, advocacy is, you know, a lot of people think, you know, it's in Washington and, you know, and the UN and something. Advocacy starts at home, from my perspective. In dinner table, when you have a barbecue with family members, at schools, you know, at the cafeteria, you know, at the club, talk about human beings, you know. And that's where advocacy starts. And yes, talking to the congressman is a good idea because he has power or she has power, or the White House. But in our community, in our neighbors, yeah, have it openly, because sometimes we're afraid. You know, some people are undocumented because somebody may be calling ICE to them. But find a way. Churches, synagogue, mosque, everywhere we get the chance, we need to talk about it. That's where advocacy starts, and talking to your teacher is on the issue. Asking your university to take a stand with the people. Rather than just, okay, and come, we'll teach you, great. It's better to be successful with some principle. And I think success without principle is just barren. It has no value. And you actually degrade yourself. Yes, I could have worked for IBM, I have education. It's not a bad idea, but have principles. Your success has foundations. Yeah. Otherwise, we go to school, we graduated. I have 5 kids, and they go to school, they graduated, they get a job. That's very much it. So I think advocacy starts within ourselves. We need to see our back. We need to have the checkpoint in terms of our value system. Yes, the party is good, and birthday wishes and other issues are football, basketball. Every university, the passion for football and basketball is so wonderful. Do we have the same passion for other human beings?
Yeah, I think.
Anyway, so that's advocacy for me. Advocacy is everywhere. Anytime you see some injustice anywhere, it can be a small grocery store, or at the university, or the cafeteria, the people who clean, the people who, be a person of meaning, purpose.
Right. Yeah, that's what I usually think. Like, it starts with yourself and then spreading it to everyone around you and your community, and starting off there before going so big. So I'm not sure if anyone else has another question, if anyone wants to go. If not, I can add something before we end. I guess the other question was kind of for people who want to get into this kind of work and want to or at least impact things we're dealing with immigration, where do you feel like they should start? If it should be through what kind of job or anything like that?
So the issue, let me stop this quote. I'm assuming the question you're asking me is people interested to the immigration.
Right, yeah.
My advice for you is, before you take into human rights issues, immigration are human rights issues, refugees are human rights issues, either justice issue, equal justice issues, all of it, before you embark on that journey, you need to do what I call self-examination. If it's not your own value system, don't do it. You will damage it. If you don't have the passion, and that passion is deep inside you, don't do it. But if it's a reflection of who you are, it's what you wanted to do for the rest of your life. If you believe that serving as a human being is a meaningful way to live life, then go for it. You'll be very happy. Because you're doing what you want to do. But if you're thinking of making a lot of money, if your idea is buying, a mansion in Miami Beach, please stay, do that job. Stay. So I think the best thing you guys can do is, there's a need for immigration lawyers. There's a need human rights advocates, social service advocates. There's just so many places, so many needs, not just on here. It can be in Venezuela, it can be in El Salvador, it can be in Mexico, it can be anywhere in Pakistan. Be that person, but first make sure that's where you are. It's really very important. I will tell you that. I see a lot of people, they come to Washington, this international city, they get a job after 2 or 3 years, they quit. And yes, it's too early for you guys to make a career decision, but any job you take, if you know exactly what you're taking it, that want to make money, that's fine. Make that decision. That if you want to pursue this immigration, refugee, and human rights, equal justice issues, all of that, public service, the most effective people I know, are those people who really think that their job they have is a reflection of who they are as a people, as a person. And if you want happiness over money, you should make that decision. Use that process. Why I want to do this. Otherwise, it's going to be challenging for you. And then think globally now. We're part of the global community. Your vision, your interest doesn't have to be limited to where you live or where your parents live. It can be someplace else. It can be back in Venezuela. It can be back in Honduras. Why not?
Yeah, thank you for that. I honestly had never really thought of it that way. It's a really interesting take. I think it really is knowing that it is something you should be passionate about and realizing what it is that you're going to be doing with all the people that you'll be helping. So I think that kind of cuts our time because we're almost at 2. So I don't know if there's any further comments or questions. If not, thank you very much, Mr. Negash, for being here and for just talking to us in this hour.
Well, thank you for your interest. I wish you good luck. And feel free to check our website if there's anything we can share with you. Even if you are interested to work for us, check our website.